like, if somebody's like turn left, like my husband will get really mad because we'll be driving somewhere and he's like, okay, turn left up here. And I literally turn right and he's like, what the fuck?
I always say the other left.
Yes.
Yes. You know what I saw recently? Okay, we're just going to go very off track here. But a lot of people, when you tell them north, like point to north, they'll point up.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why?
Or when people are like, yeah, I live on the east side or the west side. I'm like, I don't know where that is. I think I know that I'm on the west side now.
Yeah.
Because I've been told so many times.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
Welcome back. What did we decide on we were talking about today?
I think we were discussing the topic of, like, we always talk about, our trainers always talk about what we need from our dogs, what we need our dogs to do. And I think that's an important part of the equation in dog training. But it may be interesting to discuss what our dogs need from us in return. Yeah. So I didn't know.
Today's dog-centric podcast.
Yes. Yeah. And it's not going to be what you expect, but.
Yeah.
To the left or the right?
Scooch on. Scooch on over. Oh, do we want to give a update of the dog that I was talking about last time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's get a quick update on that.
And as I suspected, things are going great. Things are going awesome. The owner sent me, actually, like midway through the week, an email that had day by day kind of run-throughs of exactly what happened and what they had to do and things like that. And I'd say for the first 3 days after our session, they had to give him one correction a day for something. Mind you, the family member that lives with them was like in and out multiple times. So one correction, I'm cool with that a day. And then I just spoke with her yesterday, and it's been like 3 days since they've had to give any corrections at all.
Nice.
It's killing it.
It's awesome.
Good job.
He's doing great.
Good commitment to the owners.
A notable story they told me was that, because they have another German Shepherd, and was that the doorbell rang, their other German Shepherd barked a few times and went up to the door, and that's never been an issue for her with her temperament and everything. And the dog that we've been working with, he started to go up to the door, and about halfway down the hallway, stopped, turned around, just walked himself right back and laid down somewhere and said, I don't think I'll do that, actually.
Hell yeah. That's good.
So,
It's what we like to see.
Yeah. That's good consistency by the owner then.
Yeah.
Nice job.
They've done a really good job. So
and that
it's
could
working.
That could be a good example of what our dog needs from us and what we need from our dog.
Yep.
It's the best of both worlds.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it was the perfect combination of things, and he sounds like he's doing well.
Yeah, he's doing really good. So there's your update from what we talked about
Or
last time.
a pup date.
Pup date.
Pup date.
Okay. So a dog-centric topic.
Yeah.
Let's think like a dog.
I mean, the things that are immediately coming to mind for me surrounding this topic are prioritizing like activities like that your dog would actually like and not what you think they should like.
Yes.
Or what
pushing
you've
them
been
into
told
things.
what they should like. Like an example for me I can think of is like, if I'm going to do anything with Lumos before I go home at the end of my work day, because he comes to work with me, he would much rather like do scent work here or run on the treadmill or the slap mill than do like a social. And like I have the ability to put him in a social and I could do that, but that's not going to be nearly as like enriching for him personally than if I did one of those other activities that he'd actually like a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. Like same for Sunday. Like when I'm trying to burn her energy, I know like she does like socials a lot, but it has to be kind of the right temperament of dog.
Yeah.
And so I try to, if I'm trying to burn some energy, I'll put her with a puppy, or we'll do the treadmill or scent work. And that's where she like thrives. But I could very much see if you're an owner and you're like, well, my dog should like socials. They should like playing with other dogs. And then they're just not playful
We tend
at all.
to fixate on that a little too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they get really sad because they think that their dog should have friends. And then their dogs don't want to have friends.
Mm-hmm.
And they're happy just being a human dog.
Yep.
Yes. Some
And that's
dogs are
okay.
just not social dogs.
Right.
Like
I mean, even
extroverts
Sully's
and
the same way.
introverts. Yeah.
Like he like we were kind of talking about yesterday too. I've been slowly kind of getting him into more socials and stuff, but again, it's just something that he would prefer to just have some toy time and just like play some fetch or whatever. You know, like so when I take him home, let him run around a little bit more just with me. And you know, not that he doesn't get along in socials, like you were saying, like Lumos can do a social, but he just doesn't prefer it.
Yeah.
And
He's
that's
not
okay.
like, yay, that was so fun. Like
Yeah.
if we're truly talking about like things that your dog likes and like enjoys, that can be very different from things you should do with them all the time. They sometimes they cross paths, but a lot of the time, you know, it's okay to pick the thing that your dog would actually want to do and
Yeah.
enjoy.
I used to work at a local doggy daycare, which was a disaster. Just in itself. And it was one of those that the owners had accesses to the camera all day and they could watch their dog. And you'd be in a group and you'd hear the phone ring and you'd be like,
You know, it's someone.
Someone's watching and they're upset.
yeah, and, what's up? And they're like, I see that Fluffy's in the corner and he's not really playing. Can you make him play? And Fluffy's like, I'm overstimulated. I am overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And
I
I
don't
want
wanna be
to
here.
go
Come
home.
near me, woman.
Yeah.
And then the owners would get mad at you for the situation. You'd be like, what do I do here? I can't make your dog play. I can't make your dog enjoy this. And it's a 45 dog daycare and there's only one attendant in there. Like, I don't know what you want me to do.
Yep.
So we have to look at things like that. Like, does our dog actually enjoy this? Are they showing stress signals? And then we also thought it would be a good idea to talk about like when that's appropriate to push and when it's not appropriate to push.
Yeah. I had a client ask me, may have been yesterday. All my days are blurring together. They were like, how do we teach fetch? And I was like, you don't really. There's like two types of dogs that will naturally gravitate towards fetch and enjoy it. Fetch is something that, yes, you can give like more structure to it and direction to it, but either the dog does it or they don't.
Yeah.
It's not really something
Yep.
like as an activity or like a fun game that you should have to teach. Then it doesn't really become fun anymore. But I find that like the dogs that really like fetch are either like your retrieving breeds, and the part of fetch that they like is the bringing it back. So they will go chase it for the enjoyment of bringing it back to you. That's what they get out of it. And then there's dogs that like the prey aspect of it in the chase, and they will bring it back to you just so you can throw it again and they can chase it.
Right. And that would be more where like the structure comes in with something like that kind of dog. Like
Yes.
that's kind of how Sully is. Like
Yeah.
I had to like teach him kind of how to like, I'm not going and getting it every single time. If
Yes.
you want to play this game, you
Yes.
have to participate in the game
But
too.
he
Exactly.
showed like drive for the game.
To
Like,
chase
Yes.
it.
He
Yes.
wanted to be an active participant.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why most people that have like labs and golden retrievers and stuff, they don't ever if you ask anyone with a dog like that, they don't ever have to teach fetch because the game as a whole is complete immediately out of the womb.
It's
Because
instinctual.
they throw it, they get it, they bring it back. They throw it, they get it, they bring it back. But to your point, if you have a dog who likes chasing, you can just add some structure in and teach the dog. The sooner you get it back to me, the quicker that chase starts again, and then you get it back. But there's some dogs that like they don't give a shit about fetch.
And
You
that's
know what I
okay.
They're like,
mean?
why did you
And like,
throw that?
yeah, they're like, this doesn't make any sense to me at all.
They're like, why? Why would I go get that?
Right.
And
Yeah.
nothing feels dumber than throw a ball and you're like, yes, go get it. And the dog's like,
Yeah.
no. And
They're
then
like-
I get a little bit embarrassed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
No.
I'm like, oh.
Yep.
Like, oh, this is embarrassing.
But we do like a daycare service here at our facility, and sometimes when we have to get creative with switching things up, so we'll take out the toys, we'll put the dogs on the treadmill, we'll do
Yep.
agility, and we'll do socializing. And through that, it's interesting to see like what personalities like which things.
Yeah.
And then once we know that, we can kind of cater the program of that daycare day specifically to the dog.
Yeah.
Or like when you're in lessons or doing lessons with clients, like we can specifically like explore what our dogs like.
Mm-hmm. That is one of the reasons I like our daycare here, is because it doesn't really matter like what my clients' dogs are like. They can come to a daycare and know that in some facet their dog is going to enjoy parts of the day.
Yeah.
You know, because even if you have a dog that isn't very social, our daycare isn't just socializing, you know, and so they'll get socialized, but they'll also get walked, and then they'll get playtime, and then they'll get training. And so they get all of the little bits and pieces to where like majority of the day they feel very like they enjoy it. They actually have a good time.
Yeah. And that can be like difficult for people to sometimes like specifically when like we talked about not seeing their dogs play and social, but there's so much more. And that's why I can't ever recommend like other typical doggy daycares, is because some dogs just are not fit for that. I think some dogs love it, but it's also a lot of stimulation over a long period of time. And I don't believe any dog thrives off of
And I think that's another thing too, is not only kind of listening to what your dog wants or paying attention to what your dog like enjoys doing, but also the time restriction that you have in those activities as well. You know?
Yeah. How long you make them do it.
Right. Because even if your dog likes to socialize or likes to play or whatever with the toys, there comes a time where they're like kind of like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know? And you have to
burn out by
you have
it.
to listen to that as well. You know, especially in the aspect of socialization, I
I
found.
think like in the last like 10 to 15 years, something that's gotten really popular is taking dogs out places and into public. And that's like, did not happen. I don't remember that happening when I was a kid.
No, we didn't take our dogs anywhere.
No.
Yeah.
Wow,
Nice.
Ruby.
Wow, Ruby. Special guest here is Ruby today. But now that you're seeing people and dogs in places, there are just definitely dogs that are like people want them to be patio dogs. They want them to be cafe dogs.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're like, while I agree we should push the envelope a little bit and have the dog be able to be behaved in public, because if we ever go to the vet or we have to go into public, we should expect the dog to listen. But there has to be a point where you're like, I'd like to expose you to this a little bit more, but maybe a bar setting or a patio setting isn't right for my dog.
Yeah, on a Saturday night, going to the bar
Yeah.
where there's going to be
Yeah.
drunk people all around and stuff. Not the best, you know.
Like-
if you're working on public exposure, if you're working on people coming up and wanting to constantly ask, it's just like, one, the dog's not going to enjoy it. And two, eventually you're going to get sick of it, you know? Like,
Yeah.
if you're trying to enjoy your time and every 5 minutes you have to, like, pivot around just to make sure someone's not sneaking up on you,
Yeah.
you know?
Like Sunday absolutely loves the patio life.
Yeah.
She's a patio queen. She will fall asleep on patio. That's just very much what she likes to do. But all of my other dogs would be beside themselves.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We can find different things that they like.
Yep.
And like you said, another aspect of like prioritizing the dog is also knowing like what they need from you as like
Yes.
their owner too. So like
Yeah.
not only there are different ways to enrich them and different activities and stuff to do with them, but also what type of like person or human they need in their life to be successful and like be the best version of themselves. Because if you have a dog that's a specific personality type, I think the biggest downfalls I see people fall into with a dog is they either constantly compare the dog to either other dogs, like their friends' dogs, their family dogs, whatever, or previous dogs that they've had before.
Yeah.
And comparing your dog to all the other dogs, it's a waste of energy. It isn't going to change anything. It's not going to suddenly, your dog isn't going to hear you saying you wish that they were like your old dog or like your mom's dog and be like, you know what, you're right.
Why didn't you say so?
Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah.
I'll adjust these things quickly. It's just gonna allow you to like wallow in a very unhappy place, and
Resent your dog.
there's nothing really productive about it at all. You just kind of have to accept that, like, okay, so this dog isn't like all of those dogs, and I need to accept that and move on and behave accordingly. And your life with them will exponentially improve because, or, you know, I've seen other people struggle with, like, they get a dog and they are very, like, dead set on what their life with a dog should look like. And if it has to deviate from, like, that picture in the slightest, they're not willing to, like, give in areas where there needs to be a little bit of give, or structure in areas where there needs to be a little bit more structure. Like, there's been some clients that are, like, dead set on, like, dog park. This dog needs to be able to go to the dog park. And it's like, why? What is it about the dog park that's so important to you? Is it because you think that the dog park is your only way to exercise your dog? The dog park shouldn't be a version of exercise. So that's kind of the downfall of the dog park in general. But there's plenty of other ways you can exercise your dog. Is it because all of your friends go to the dog park with their dog and you feel bad and sad that you can't go with your dog? Like, let's get to the root of why maybe this thing is, like, so important to you, and then reframe, like, some other options or things like that.
Yeah.
I know that another big one we run into is, like, maybe the dogs not being as affectionate, or their personality, they receive love, like, very differently than other dogs. They're not cuddly, they're not whatever it might be, and a lot of owners have a difficult time.
They want to be friendly with everyone that comes in the house.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a big one too, is, like, some people get in this trap. They're like, well, he's not friendly with the guests that come in, and like, everybody and their mother should be able to pet my dog.
Yeah.
And in reality, like, no.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody that you feel like you're not giving special permissions to should pet the dog.
I would argue there's very few dogs in the world that actually enjoy that.
Yeah.
And the number of dogs that happens to are just tolerant of it, like, more tolerant than others. But I would say there's very few dogs that genuinely want to interact and be touched by every single person that they come in contact with.
And they might like it with you, but not other people, and that's okay. Like, a dog is allowed to set boundaries, and, like, we're allowed to tell certain people, like, you can't pet the dog.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest, like, no or whatever, like, that we have talked about multiple times in other podcasts is, again, the nervousness or anxiety that dogs have when meeting people on, like, a leash or whatever, right? And they're like, well, go say hi, you know, and they try to kind of, like, push that interaction. And that's where you, again, just a big thing from our perspective of knowing this stuff now is just, like, clearly the dog doesn't want to do that. So think about, like, what the dog wants and needs in that situation, not what you want from them, you know?
Yeah, and, like, respecting and giving your dog the autonomy to have that choice. And like, we recently worked with a dog, and it had been snarling at his owners, and she's very sweet, and she wanted to give him affection. She wanted to give him the love that she wanted to give him. But he did not like that. He was a little bit overwhelmed by it. So he came to training, did the training, and as soon as he got home, she repeated those behaviors, thinking that we would have trained it out of him.
Yeah.
But he was, like, clearly overwhelmed by the affection and was showing signs of that. So the way that we worked on it is that we basically taught the dog that when the owner, when affection is being given, he's allowed to walk away.
Yeah.
And once he walks away, you do not chase him down to try to give him more affection. A dog walking away from you in an affectionate setting or a pet setting, like, leave them alone.
Yeah.
That is their signal to be, they're like, okay, I'm done. And that is such a healthy behavior as opposed to biting you or snapping at you.
Yeah.
Right.
If you chase them down or you give them commands to make them come back to you, they will stop walking away as their first signal, and instead they will just start biting people.
Yeah. And I was going to make the same point of, like, if the dog does walk away, don't immediately give them a command that forces them to come back into that awkward situation.
Yes. Because they're trying to make the right choice.
Right.
Yes.
And they're over it. They don't want you touching them anymore.
Yep.
And also, like, if your dog is sleeping somewhere, just leave them alone.
Yeah.
I get it. They're real cute. Okay. They're real cute, all cuddled up. They look real cozy. Don't touch them.
Yeah.
But like,
Just leave them be. Don't
yeah,
touch
how
'em.
many stories do you hear? They were like, well, he was sleeping and I wanted to give him a kiss.
Yeah,
and
don't do that.
He bit my son's
Or
eye.
he was sleeping and I wanted to go lay down and like lay on top of him.
Yeah, dogs' love language is not the same as a human's love language.
Yeah.
And like, while like we talked about, dogs may like that from specific people, it's okay if they don't want it from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes. Even you as the owner, your dog is still allowed to have like preferences on how you behave and interact with them during the day and stuff like that.
Yep.
Like, I think we have a number of dogs that we've worked with where they've bitten their owners in the face because their owner gets down right in their face, wants to kiss them, wants to hug them, whatever. And I think some of them recognize and they're like, I fucked up. I just won't do that again. And then some of them are like, okay, so what do we do to the dog when that happens?
Yes.
And
Yes,
it's
the
like,
dog's
you
problem.
just stop hugging them.
Right.
Yeah. Or
Right.
You don't hug them. That's how we fix that problem.
in like scenarios with children, especially, they're like, my dog can't act like that around the kids. And then they blame the dog and they're like, the dog is the problem. And you step into the picture and you're like, the kid is also part of the problem, crawling, jumping, pulling at the dog, like that. Those aren't okay behaviors.
No, it's a two-way street. Like, if you want your dog to be tolerant and respectful of the kid, then the kid needs to be tolerant and respectful of the dog. Like,
Right.
you can't allow them to treat it like a toy. That's a moment where what your dog needs from you in prioritizing them is to set boundaries with how people interact with your dog, whether that's kids or whoever at that point.
It's like never really an easy answer to give people because like in the first, some people get right away, they're like, oh crap.
Yep.
And other people are like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I have to change my life for this
Right.
dog. And they're like, how am I going to tell a 1-year-old not to go over to the dog bed? And
You
it's just-
don't. You just don't let it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So
That's how that works. You just don't let it happen. And so that's like, and I think another big piece of this is being so recognizing that like you have to prioritize the dog in unchangeable features of their personality in your life when you accept the responsibility of taking in a dog, whether you adopt it, whether you get it from a breeder, whatever the situation is. You have to be, again, so careful and particular about what that dog is that you're bringing into your house. If you have kids and you go and get an Akita, yikes.
they're like, "Ooh,
Like,
why
Right.
is he barking at my kid?
yeah, like, can
What?
Akitas be good with kids in their house? Yes. Is their tolerance for children still very low? Yes. And will they be good if once your kids grow up and start having a bunch of friends over and these kids are screaming and running around the house and going crazy? Probably not, you know? So that's an equally important part of this where you have to take all of those factors into account, that if you're going to get a specific type of dog, if you're going to put it in a specific type of lifestyle, that you have to make sure you're prioritizing and figuring out ways that it will be successful for its whole life. You know, we have to think long term with these things. We can't think short term.
And you also want to be the person that the dog needs you to be if you're going to get breeds that are a little bit more difficult. And softness and permissiveness for any breed, it doesn't end well in all areas. Like that might, like I could get away with being very soft and affectionate with my 4-pound Chihuahua. But if I had a Cane Corso or German Shepherd or anything, even like my Beagle,
Yeah.
like she will push and push and push on that softness and permissiveness. So we have to accept that a dog is somewhat looking for a leader, and we have to be able to guide them and direct their behaviors.
Right.
Whether we like what they're doing or not, they need information.
And in the aspect of like prioritizing the dog, I think that's the one piece that gets left out. So an interesting situation actually that I just saw the other day that kind of plays into this is I was leaving Crocker Park from a lesson, just like an outdoor shopping center area, and there was a man walking a doodle puppy. It was probably like 6 or 7 months old. Dog was completely out of control on a harness, just doodling around, bouncing everywhere, right?
They do.
As they do.
Yep.
And he walks by this girl, this like young adult girl, I would say. And he walks by, the dog just like jumps right on top. The fury that I would feel in my body if I walked by a random dog and it jumped on me, I'm sorry. That
Even a puppy. Yeah.
dogs jumping on me is my biggest pet peeve. It's so disrespectful. And to know your dog is going to do that, because he knew the dog was going to do that, and to not create enough space to where it was respectful of other people in a public setting, I was like, And then beyond that, so the dog jumps on her and she kind of walks away, doesn't really engage. He keeps going. And then he turns around and he says something to her. And I don't know what the exchange was, but ultimately what ended up happening is she walks back over. This dog completely just goes crazy and jumps all over her. She like pets it a couple times and walks away. And if this man had the nerve to look at her and be like, oh, can my dog just say hi to you really quick after that whole encounter? And this poor girl probably feeling like obligated to not be like, no, goes over there. And then this whole thing. And this is the point I'm making with this is that did the dog want to do that to the girl? Yes. He wanted to jump all over her. He wanted to see her. He wanted to say hi, all those things. And prioritizing your dog in that moment is not looking at his short-term feelings and desires and being like, yes, I should give him that because he enjoys it. Prioritizing your dog in the long term and giving them what they actually need looks like, you can't do that to people. Right. I need to teach you how to conduct yourself properly.
Yeah. And that's like where this topic could get confusing to people, because they're like, I should do anything that my dog wants. Like if we did everything, well, our dogs wanted, I think Lumos would have killed somebody. Sunday would be morbidly obese.
His favorite birthday present would be me bringing an unsuspecting person into the house and letting him do whatever he wanted to them. And he'd be like, Merry Christmas.
He'd be like, come in, please.
Yeah, right. Come in. He's like that episode of Criminal Minds where those like parents like bring in people for their son to kill, so that they help him, as like a serial killer.
Oh yeah,
Lumos.
That's a great episode. It's a great episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Anywho. But it's part of like prioritizing. It's the same thing. You could parallel that to kids, right? Like, does my kid want a lollipop every 5 minutes? Sure. And that would make them happy if I did that. But obviously they're going to get cavities and all their teeth are going to fall out. So, and that's not good habits to be setting them up for long term, is to live off of just impulse. And anything you want, you can have it. You can have it. You can have it.
Because it doesn't turn into what you think it's going to turn into. It turns into a dog that's ultimately really anxious and nervous and lacks structure, that they just take everything into their own hands.
Oh yeah.
And that's not a good way for a dog to live.
Right.
No. And so what's interesting is even in settings like in public, and this is always very offensive to people. I don't really care, but there's been numerous times where I'll be out in public somewhere, somebody's dog's going absolutely bananas, and they'll say to you, I'm sure we've all heard this, oh, can you just like pet them and then they'll stop? Yeah. Oh, can you just pay attention to them and then they'll stop? They just once they say hi to you, they'll stop. And like just like as a complete stranger out at like a patio or something or whatever, I'm standing in line at a coffee shop, they'll ask me that and I'll look at them and be like, no, thank you. And then just turn around, and these people are utterly flabbergasted. I am not obligated to behave in a certain way for you so that your dog listens better. Like, I'm not part of your training program,
and you don't want to be
I'm a stranger.
That toxic mindset, like
like you can't, like, imagine doing that with a child. Like, oh, will you buy my child a lollipop and then they'll shut up? Who would do that?
Yeah.
Like that's I'm not. No, I have no obligation to your child. I have no obligation to your dog. You can't tell me what to do so that your dog behaves better in a public setting because you don't want to train it properly. Like, get your dog to stop barking at me.
And it's not going to be just you.
No, it's
Even
everyone.
if you were to do it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, fine, whatever. Dog like stops jumping, which it wouldn't. Bridget comes over. Dog's going to do it to Bridget too.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you like?
Or
what's the end goal there?
Yeah,
you know?
like we'll hear it all the time, like in the house setting too.
Like if you just give them a treat, they'll leave you alone.
Or if you say hi to them, they'll leave you alone.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of in-home work where I would prior to working here, and I would drive around to people's houses all day, and a lot of them were like first time consultations. I've never met these people before, never met these dogs before, whatever. And that was super common. As I would come in, they'd have treats immediately ready. They would want to give them to me and be like, if you give him a treat, he'll stop barking at you. This is what we do. Or if you give him a treat, he won't jump on you or whatever. Or I would come in and like I conduct myself in my personal life and professional life, I don't pay attention to dogs when I go places. I don't immediately look at the dog. I address the human that I'm there to see. Yeah. So I'll like go in and I'd be talking to them, shaking their hands, hi, introducing myself, whatever. The dog's going absolutely berserk, jumping all over me, biting my clothes, barking. And they will literally be like, well, can you just please acknowledge him so he stops doing that? And I'm like, no, I have no desire to do that right now. Obviously, I was very nice about it, and I would explain why I don't and why we're going to fix that. But it's just very backwards how people think.
And you're like reinforcing those behaviors. Like I was Nelson's pet sitter before I was his owner, and I went and I did a consultation with them, and Nelson's behavior was ungodly. He was horrible. He was like trying to attack me by my ankles. Barking, and the owners kept feeding him to distract him, and he was like in between bites and like barking that he choked on the treat, and they're like can you get him, you have to do the Heimlich on him, and it was so normal for them. And they're just like, I'm like trying to talk to them, and they have him like bent over, and they're smacking his back. And so he eats like a half cup a day, and he's just really particular, and you can't look at him this way or that way. And he's like literally choking. His eyes are bloodshot red, and nobody's panicking. And I'm just like watching that. Gosh. And then the treat comes out of his mouth, and they're like, yeah, so that's what we do when people come over, and when come over, we'll leave treats by the door.
It's a near-death experience every time.
My gosh,
he was literally
crazy.
Choking. Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah.
That kind of
And do you think that's what he wants to do?
You're right.
Yeah.
So bring it back.
You know, for part of like the dogs reacting, it feels good. They're like, oh yeah.
Well, what's interesting too is I feel like I see this a lot in doodles specifically, but a lot of dogs, but I think doodles get mischaracterized a lot that they're happy when they're just panicking. Your doodle is panicking. They're not okay.
I've got one of those right now.
They're not happy. And people, they look at the behavior and they're like, they're just happy. They just want to see everyone. They want to say hi. Your dog is struggling. They are going through it right now. They're bebopping, they're bouncing. That they do. Yeah, and they're just like, they never stop moving. Like we'll get dogs that will come in for training. And the whole like first session that we're talking at the beginning of the session, just getting all the information, talking. This dog is just it like
pulling
literally can't stop. Panting as if it's like and it's hyperventilating.
So uncomfortable for a dog to live in that mindset.
Yeah. And in our head, the way that behavior gets perpetuated is because we're constantly trying to appease the dog in every emotion and whatever they're feeling all the time. We're like, oh, it wants to go see that person. I'll let it go see that person. It wants to go see that dog. I'll let it go see that dog. And then the one day you're not paying attention and it sees the dog before you and it barks a couple times and then it jumps on you and you're like, oh yeah, there's a dog. Let's go see it. You're just little by little constantly training the dog to keep demanding and to keep being overstimulated and to get over aroused. And your dog doesn't need that from you in that moment.
Your dog needs you to say no to them.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
your dog
Like
needs
reel
you to
them back
guide
a little
them.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And be like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't mean that we can't interact with other dogs, but we're going to do it in a safe and effective manner and not on leash.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're not going to appease every emotion your dog has.
Yeah.
Like, Sunny and I just had a board and train, and the first day I met the dog, it was fucking jumping at my face. It was wild. It was so unruly, and it punched me in the stomach so hard. And it was just like, they were like, I don't know what to do with this. And they're like, we give him treats when he does that, because at least it gets him to stop jumping. We'll throw treats on the floor.
Yeah.
Which is a very common training method. The dog nailed the training, did perfect, no more jumping. And I called her just to update, and she was like, is he robotic? And I was like, no, he's calm.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And
we really need to reframe what we see or think happy is in a dog.
We had that discussion. She was like, oh my God. And
Yeah.
I was like, so he still can have fun. He still plays with his toys. There's still moments where we're allowed to be affectionate with him. He's just not allowed to go berserk when people come in.
Right.
And sometimes we think that makes a dog sad or present as sad.
Yes.
And they just know there's a consequence to those things.
Yeah. I have a dog I'm working with right now that is very dog aggressive. It actually killed their other dog in the house. And she we were doing a session, and she was actively trying to go after me during the session just for simply interrupting those like aggressive fits towards like other dogs that she could visually see. And just me being there, she was redirecting and just really going through it, having a hard time. And we work through it. We get to where she's not doing that anymore. But of course, her demeanor is this, right? And just simply from me persisting, right? And persisting through a point. I'm not giving big corrections. I'm not doing anything in that moment other than she was muzzled, not allowing her to win, right? And execute what she was trying to do, which she just was so overstimulated and so over aroused. She could not process. She had no emotional regulation whatsoever. And we get through this whole process, and she is, of course, completely discombobulated, does not know how to conduct herself in a way that isn't aggression in the presence of other dogs.
And it probably had always worked before, and now it wasn't working, and she's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. Because these are behaviors that she's done to her owners in certain settings, is intimidation, right? She can use that to get her way in what she wants, and then suddenly it wasn't working. And something the owner asked me, which I've been asked frequently over my career, and you guys have probably been asked it before too, is like, or the concern I should say is like, well, is this going to break her spirit? Okay. And I was like, what's spirit?
Yeah.
Like, what is the spirit? Yeah. That's the common question I ask people who say that, is like, well, what's the spirit? And no one can answer me.
Yeah.
Because they don't even know what that means.
Right.
They don't know what that means.
They're afraid that by enforcing rules or being more of a leader to their dog, or like being really firm on their dog, is somehow going to make their dog not connect with them anymore. So sometimes subconsciously it's coming from a selfish place.
Yeah.
And then we see the dog was actively trying to hurt you.
Yeah.
And then,
has actively, effectively
and hurt others. Killed before.
Yes.
And in that moment, the owner was probably going off of her, just, her gut emotion, which was like, why is the dog shaking? Mm-hmm. And then you have to have a conversation. Well, that's not what we're focused on right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because it's just, because that is a common thought process of like, well, I don't want to break their spirit. I don't want them to be robotic. I don't want them to whatever it is. And it's when you look at that situation as a whole, again, first, like, what is the spirit? Mm-hmm. And if that behavior or that that the behaviors that caused your dog to actively try to harm me and to kill your other dog, if that's the spirit we're breaking, I am all for it.
Yeah.
If that's what we're doing, then we have to. There's not really any other option here. And like you said, like, I get the concern and where it's coming from, but when you're taking a dog that has such dangerous capabilities, that their immediate happiness in the moment is not the priority. The priority is, how do we keep this dog alive?
Right.
And right now, the process to do that is we have to go through a pretty long journey, because our starting point is pretty low, and we've got to work our way all the way back up through all of this to get to the point where is the dog's overall quality of life our priority? Absolutely. But a dog that behaves like that, just by simply sitting in a lobby where there's dogs on the other side of a fence that are completely under control, being walked back and forth, and that's what that causes that dog to do, that's not a quality of life anyways.
And that's not safe to the general public. It's not safe for the owners. So like, we have to not be dog centric in the moments of like, how is the dog feeling about these rules?
Yes.
It's like, what's the end goal? What's the light at the end of the tunnel? And can we prioritize the training as a whole to ultimately get to the place where we are giving our dog a beautiful quality of life?
Yeah.
And we're able to go to a park with them, something that I'm sure maybe that client didn't feel comfortable doing on her own before.
Yeah.
It's like small little baby steps.
And like going into like fear reactivity, right? Like, it's the dog wants to react because that's what they've done, and they've been able to be successful with it. But what they truly want is to not be scared,
Yeah.
you know? And so that's where implementing the structure is, like, by giving the dog what they want is the confidence and understanding of, don't be so scared, or don't react because you're scared. Right. So when we have a lot of this fear reactivity, that's again where, like, I feel like people can get kind of caught up with it. It's like, we're not saying don't let your dog lunge. We're saying give them structure so that they can do what they want to do, which is be in those settings and not constantly be so on edge.
And be well behaved.
Yeah.
Or in the context of what you're talking about with in our previous podcast with that like dominant, aggressive dog, that's not happy for that dog either.
No.
Like, he feels like he has to defend, and it's not coming from a place of fear necessarily, but it's still an uncomfortable mindset for him to live in.
Yeah. And it's not a sustainable mindset.
No.
Like, you can't have a dog that behaves that way for 12 years.
Yeah.
So it's just not going to work.
We have to look at, in those situations, what does our dog need from us to thrive ultimately and not thrive in the moment? So like, where we kind of, owners can tend to skate over things or miss things because it's uncomfortable to do these things with our dogs.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable to tell them no. It's uncomfortable to set rules and change our relationship. But ultimately, it's what's best.
I mean, we can't go through life doing everything we do based off of how we feel in the moment. I mean, you can. Have fun with that.
Yeah.
It'll be fun for a little bit, and then it won't very quickly.
Yeah.
That's not sustainable either. And so our dogs, they only have us. If we want to take a dog out of their natural setting, domesticate them, and force them to live in a human world, and then also be selfish and give them no guidance on how to do that, that's not very cool of us.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like a big word in the dog training industry is structure. Like structure. Every training page you go on is going to say the word structure.
Yeah.
But what does that mean?
Right.
You know, what does structure mean? And that's like your dog believing in you and the ability to lead them and direct them to what they need, and utilizing obedience in some areas when it's needed, and utilizing just like being able to tell them yes and no.
Yeah, accountability. You have to give them feedback on their behaviors. Like, a dog that I just started working with has a lot of the typical like issues you would get with like she looks like she's some kind of like terrier, border collie-ish type mixed
Is that the
dog.
one from yesterday?
Yeah. And she's reactive on leash. She's reactive out the windows. She's grumpy in the house sometimes about space. She resource guards from their other dog, things like that. And a lot of when we started working with her in the session, like as soon as we gave, like for leash walking, for instance, she's been terrible at leash walking. She's like 6, I believe, her whole life. They've never done professional training with her. We put a prong on her, gave her a couple prong corrections, and she literally was like at my side, looking up at me, prancing, no food involved, nothing. And they were just like,
I love that.
why did we wait this long?
I love when that happens.
Yep.
They were like, why does she, like, what? And I was like, this dog, all of these behaviors stemmed from having a dog who was like, what the fuck is my purpose?
Right.
What am I here for? What do I do?
Midlife crisis, but in a dog.
Yeah,
form.
like I have like drive and I want to do things, but I don't know what to do, and there's no feedback on my behaviors. So I'm going to bark out the window, and I'm just going to constantly act on these impulses all the time. And then as soon as you give them an ounce of like, hey, do this, they're like, oh my God, I will do whatever you say. Please just tell me what to do. Like they're like thirsty for it. That's like what they want.
It's like we have to remember that behavior is behavior to dogs. They cannot distinguish what is good.
They have no
and
morals.
What is bad. So it is our job to guide them. I don't want you counter surfing. I don't want you barking out the window. And then they're like, oh, okay. So I can't do this, but look at all these things I can do.
Right.
And look how this enriches my life. So while in the moment it's uncomfortable to start to set those boundaries or use tools or go on your journey with a trainer, ultimately, like, this dog seems like it's going to be perfectly fine, and they're going to be able to expand her life tenfold.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They were so excited. Like she was like, I am so excited to be able to like enjoy my dog
Isn't
again.
it nice?
We
Like
hear that a lot.
that first session when it goes well, and like everything you do, it's like the SpongeBob mopping episode. You wouldn't know, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't know.
there's a SpongeBob scene where like SpongeBob is trying. Okay, quick synopsis.
Please tell us. I'm interested.
So like Squidward is performing a show.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking
Oh yeah, I
about?
know. Uh-huh.
And he's like he's pulling out all the stops. He's
Okay.
like, aerobics, doing everything.
Very
And then,
theatrical.
No, the crowd's dead.
Yeah.
The crowd's like,
Oh, that's
Okay.
a
They
bummer.
start throwing tomatoes at it.
yes. And then
Oh.
SpongeBob comes out and starts mopping the floor, and people are like, yes.
They lose their mind.
They lose their mind. And that's how I feel sometimes when I'm in lessons and the client's like, oh my God, wow, that's just so amazing. And it's like, I'm making your dog sit and we're walking around.
Yeah.
And it just gives you like a warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yeah, I think we get a little like we get used to it. Like
Yeah.
all day I'm around like trained dogs or dogs that are in training and can be
We
controlled.
have expectations.
Well, and it's also like not novel to me.
Right.
Like I'm not like, oh wow, these dogs are so well behaved all the time, because it's just so normal to me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like when you have somebody who's like so excited about training, like it just like revitalizes you again,
know.
because
Or
you're
just
like,
been
oh, like this is like
struggling.
this is
Yeah.
cool. Like
Yeah.
people
Yeah,
really like this.
You get the owners that have been struggling for so long with so many issues with their dog that even the smallest thing, they're like, okay, there's hope.
Yeah.
You know, they get that glimpse, and like you see their excitement. So you like,
Yeah. Like my
Kinda throws
girls,
you.
Penny and Copper, I wish that every single person that I ever trained with was like them. Like,
yeah,
they were absolutely incredible. Their dog's behavior turned around, a complete 180 change. And she just like wanted all the information. And she's like, what books can I read? What can I do? What can we talk about this week?
Yeah.
And she came and she had like 10 questions a session. And I loved taking the time to answer them. And she would go home and apply these things. And if she had more questions, she'd answer them. And they just like, that was just such a good time.
Yeah.
Well, and I have a client I'm working with right now too, and she actually is a stylist at the place I get my hair done. And she ended up with this Corso mix that was like abandoned in a building next to one of the other stylists like houses. So it's like this dog that like grew up when those people lived in that house. It never left their property. It was constantly in a kennel, like not socialized, not out, anything like that. And then they just left it there when they moved. So they took the dog, and then she ended up taking him. And she's a first-time dog owner. and she got what could be a very difficult breed to work with.
And dangerous.
Yeah. And he's actually, like, all things considered, genetically, like, he has a pretty good stable temperament. It could have been far, far worse.
Yeah.
But he is actually relatively social. He's a little bit nervous of things, but I mean, he never saw anything,
Right.
you know, so everything is so new to him. But one thing that's been so cool to see is her, like, this is the owner. She loves this, like, the process of training with her dog. And it's so evident in him because when she trains with him, like, she's excited. So therefore he's excited.
Yeah.
You know, like, she's like, every time I get the e-collar out, he gets so excited and everything. And I'm like, Kate, that's because, like, you're excited.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you're making this, like, a very fun, positive experience for him. And how you as the owner view training and giving your dog structure and even giving them corrections and holding them accountable for things 100% will influence how your dog perceives all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I have clients that don't want to train their dog. No, they have to, so they're doing it, and I give them credit for that. But, like, they don't enjoy the process of it. You know,
it's very
like,
clear.
they're doing it because they have to, and it's a necessity, and I respect that. But the dog, you can tell that it's like they're not having a good time, so neither is the dog. You know, it's like, oh, here we go, we're training again.
Yeah.
You know, and you're training your dog, you're getting it done. That's all we can ask for. But if you want to see, but what's interesting is then a lot of times it's a cyclical thing, because then the owner's like, well, he gets so depressed when we have to train, and then I feel even worse for training him. And it's like, well, you're kind of influencing it, you know, because you're sad that you have to train him and give him corrections and hold him accountable.
Yeah.
But, like, in the instance of, like, Kate with Bruce, that's his name, they're just, like, killing it. And he's having so much fun, and she's having so much fun. And just because there's such good vibes into it, like, he's having such a great time with the training, and it's just really cool.
Well, and that brings us to kind of the whole point of this, I feel like, is that she is truly loving the training and everything because she wants the best for this dog.
Yes.
It's not, what can I get out of this dog so that my life is easier? It's what can I do for this dog that we can build this relationship and this dog can be the best it can be.
Yeah, she's training him for him.
Yes.
It can be mutual,
You know, which I think is so cool.
so it works for both parties. Like, the bad behaviors are gone, and we're enhancing the good behaviors, and we're able to have fun with them. But we can definitely see that client that comes in and they're, like, screaming at their dog, and we're like, all right, let's, you know, take a deep breath, tone it down. And then you'll say that, and they're like, oh, yeah, okay. And then the next thing they're like, stop it! And you're like, we just talked about this. Let's make it a fun, safe space for everybody.
Right.
Yep. Because, again, your dog is not intentionally trying to do things to piss you off.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they're not.
No, they're not spiteful.
What is that? What's that meme I've seen a lot of times where it's like, your dog isn't giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time.
Yeah.
Both is true.
Yeah, they're having a hard time.
And they're giving you a hard time.
Yeah, equally, both of you are having a hard time.
Everybody here is having a hard time.
Yep.
Yeah.
But how can we have a good time?
Right.
Yeah. So I'd say, to sum it all up, prioritizing the dog at its core is in areas where it is safe and healthy and appropriate. Do the things your dog wants to do. Would they rather go on a hike than go to the dog park? Go on a hike. Would they rather go play with dogs than go on a hike? Go play with other dogs. If it is safe and appropriate and healthy for them, and it's not going to contribute to, you know, degrading their overall quality of life or anything like that, then yes, absolutely. Pick the choice that your dog would prefer in those moments. But don't always go with what your dog wants in areas where it's going to
Demand.
Where it's going to change their overall safety to be around people. Their overall quality of life will diminish because you're making those choices. Make sure you're still being the one that is holding them accountable and putting things in perspective and prioritizing like their overall success long term rather than like their emotions in the moment.
Yep.
Raising a good dog.
Yes.
Let's focus on like putting the best dogs out into the world and having them be very good for us and a good fit for like what our lifestyle is.
Mm-hmm.
And we can get there.
Mm-hmm.
With puppies, remember you're raising a dog, not a puppy.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't puppies for very long.
Right.
No, unfortunately.
You know, it'd
Yeah.
be cute if they were, but
Mm-hmm.
well,
All
on
right.
that note,
Yeah.
bye guys.
Bye.
See you
ya.
later.